for years, people used to ask me stuff like that, and then I would usually say something, well, they're all like my children, and da-da-da-da-da-da. But I really do think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my best movie.
Here I come.
I mean, there's no dialogue like Tarantino dialogue.
I think this movie just kind of transports you to 1969.
For this, I think it's his most personal.
Thank God Tarantino's got one more left in him.
Whoa.
But really, is it? Well, to find this out, I hosted a Tarantino film competition on the channel. Go check it out if you haven't already. And rest assured, the results were...
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
So, what does this mean? Does this mean Tarantino is wrong? That he himself isn't aware of the quality of his films he's creating? Or is it just he's biased from personal experiences of making each movie? Well, yes, but also no. While it is true that personal biases apply, Tarantino is too much of a cinematic maniac to be wrong about a film's quality in a situation like this. So, let's try and prove him right. Let's delve into why Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Tarantino's best film.
Chaotic.
That's why that Tarantino movie's so like funny to me.
I loved it.
I don't think they ever say hippie without saying fucking in it. Everybody goes fucking hippies.
Well, there's always been people like that, right? There's always been people who want to take the whole fucking thing down,
I want to know when you can buy that movie and own it. Like what else? Because back in the day, you just buy like the DVD. Because that is like you're going on tour. That's going to be a Goodfellas movie for me, where I'm going to watch that thing
100 times.
5,000 times in my life and always see something new.
First off, this film is set in Hollywood in the late 60s. It's a time that Tarantino himself has very fond memories about. In his book Cinema Speculation, he writes about going to the cinema in his formative years, seeing films which were way too mature for his age. Films like Dirty Harry, MASH, and Bullet. This makes the late 60s the era in which his whole film career was shot from. So, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to be his favourite. But why should it be ours? Well, first off, this is the best cast of any Tarantino film. I don't think I really need to explain why, but here's a few reasons why very few Tarantino films come close to the utter stardom which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We have two of the biggest actors who have been in Tarantino films, and an actor who is literally on fire in terms of popularity. On top of this, sprinkle some stellar supporting cast, and you've got one of the greatest casting calls of the decade.
In a very, 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 very Tarantino-like way. So I am extraordinarily excited to see what people make of this film. I think, regardless of what you make of it, it's a film that forces you to confront your own reactions to it and reckon with them. And as I say, this is, after having seen it twice, the first time it was at the Cannes press screening, which was back in May, so I've had a long time to sit on this and chew it over. As I say, I do think, for me, it's at least top three of his, up with Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown, and late career masterpiece status kind of feels about right.
The film also exemplifies what makes a Tarantino film a pleasure to watch. And that is the characters he creates, the situations they find themselves in, and what they say to maneuver themselves through said situation. Tarantino is a director who does this in a way that is uniquely him. Let's take the scene where Cliff is in Spawn Ranch, for example. We know Cliff because of the way Tarantino introduced him and the way Tarantino chooses to provide information about him, like how he supposedly killed his wife and how he is a war hero. Tarantino shows us Cliff just living his life, like when he shows us just a long take of Cliff climbing up on Rick's roof and repairing his satellite dish. Now, there's something so free about watching him do this, and there are so many elements to Brad Pitt's performance of Cliff Booth that really show us the carefree and easygoing attitude of Cliff Booth, and sprinkling in elements that really make us identify and aspire to be like Cliff's character. There is something so comforting about seeing just Cliff up on the roof, completely carefree, getting on with what he has to do, and not really thinking about what's right around the corner. Just living in the moment, enjoying himself. He really is just content in what he's doing. It's this performance and this direction from Quentin Tarantino that really makes us like Cliff. We like Cliff. Cliff is the undoubted fan favourite of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that is, of course, thanks to Quentin's writing of the character. So by the time we get to the Spawn Ranch scene, we know who Cliff is. We know what he has to lose, and more importantly, we identify with him, we're rooting for him, and he's our fan favourite character. All of this makes for a unique scene which can only happen with Cliff Booth, because the scene wouldn't work without him. Now, this is all fairly basic when it comes to setting up characters in a scene. Of course, each scene is unique because they can't happen any other way without the certain characters. However, Tarantino spices up each scene in a fun way that is so uniquely him that it makes it fun to watch in a completely different way because of the environment that he puts his characters in.
A lot of scenes with guys in cars with their windows down and the music is playing KHJ from Los Angeles. You're like, whoa! And he
Harry, this is like a 60s re-trip for you.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there's no stone unturned because it's all authentic. There's no CGI.
Something that Tarantino films are largely criticised for is the large amount of surface and lack of subtext. Where subtext is more easily seen in films like Reservoir Dogs, many critics have criticised movies like The Hateful Eight for not having a deep enough layer of subtext. Now, don't get me wrong, a lack of subtext is completely fine, but when a film does have subtext and a greater depth and meaning, it surely elevates it to a higher level. And in the case of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's Tarantino's deepest film. And yeah, sure, you might think that's an absolutely ridiculous statement, since most of the movie is characters just chilling about and killing time. However, the point of my argument lies deeply with the undoubted heart of the film, Sharon Tate. The light, carefree vibe of the film is in a stark contrast to the real-life horror in which the film is based around.
In a scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird religious rite, 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski. Miss Tate, who starred in Valley of the Dolls, was 8 months pregnant and was found in a bikini-type nightgown with a rope around her neck attached to the body of a man. Among the other victims were Hollywood hairstylist Jay Sebring and coffee heiress Abigail Folger. Authorities would allow no one in an
The tragic death of Sharon Tate by the hands of the Manson family is something that haunts the film if you watch it with prior knowledge. Seeing characters killing time in an era where there simply isn't enough time to be killed. The painfully ironic circumstances of these characters is perfectly shown in the last part of the movie, when You're Out of Time by the Rolling Stones plays, as the looming marks of the 70s start to show their heads, and we dread the tragedy that will signal the end of the swinging 60s. One can think that changing such a tragic event could be in poor taste, but I think that showing Sharon Tate alive and well, when in reality she should be dead, is one of the most gut-wrenching endings to any film, because it's real. A sinking feeling overcomes me every time I watch the ending. It's like a bittersweet moment that makes you ask, why? Why couldn't it have been like this? Why did history have to turn out this way?
Everything all right? Everything's okay now, honey. But some hippies broke into the house next door.
Oh my God. Well, that's terrifying. Is everybody okay?
I'm talking to your next door neighbor.
And with that note, the film draws its curtains, pushing you away from the reality that you wish you could be in. No other Tarantino film hits this hard. That is why, in my personal opinion also, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood may just be Tarantino's best film. However, this is all subjective. I think that ranking films kind of takes away from the film as a piece by itself. Constantly comparing it to other things is basically impossible because there's so many different things about a film that makes it unique. So comparing one to another is kind of pointless. And what we should really do is appreciate each movie as its own separate experience.